I got a note from the people who supply a lot of my podcast guests, and it was about a couple of guys who do some marriage counseling, wrote a book about marriage. And I kind of yawned when I first saw the email because we've done a lot on this podcast about relationship, about marriage. And then I started digging deeper into Todd Jacobs and Peter Lynn. And I just found where they were coming from fascinating. I felt like there was a whole new twist to the conversation on how to get relationship and how to make marriage work. They wrote a book called Not a Partnership: Why We Keep Getting Marriage Wrong and How to Get It Right. And I was just dying to ask them how they came up with the title, because it goes against everything everybody says. So they're on the podcast specifically for me to get an answer to that. I'm going to read their introduction because these guys have been in business for years. They've built all kinds of stuff, but they both became so dedicated to you and your relationship that I have to read what they're doing here for now. For more than 13 years, Peter and Todd have been helping their students develop a mature and idealistic vision of marriage as a primary vehicle to create wholeness, meaning, purpose, and happiness in their lives, and on working to perfect the character issues that lie at the core of a successful spouse. For me, that's just incredible, because it just goes to why we live in the first place, and then how we add a marriage into our lives to enhance why we're here in the first place. Giving empathy, focus, staying power, and strong desire to help build the other. Their work combines practical and mystical Jewish wisdom. This is another reason why they're on the show, with modern theory and techniques, and with experience accrued through years of real world implementation and practice. I mean, that's a mouthful. That's so much. So I get to ask you the question of main question of why you're here. Why is marriage not a partnership?
Okay, this is Todd. I'm gonna grab that one if that's okay. So by the way, spoiler alert: at the end of the day, properly done, it can be a real partnership, as if to say the most meaningful partnership you'll ever have. But let me tell you why, the way most people think about partnerships, it's not. In the world of partnerships in business, and my background before I was doing, all the work I'm doing now with Peter and the students that we have spent the last, 14, 15 years with, I was a Wall Street analyst for about 11 or 12 years. And one of the things that I looked at the time was the world of partnerships in business. And I think if we can use that as an analogy for all partnerships, most partnerships in business fail. Now, most new businesses fail for reasons that, not a great business plan, not a great product, not great marketing. But partnerships have a unique reason that they fail. And that is that almost every partner in a partnership thinks about it as follows: I have my rights and my obligations, and you have your rights and your obligations. And therefore, my job is just to kind of do what I'm supposed to do, and you're supposed to do what you're supposed to do. But in reality, the way it works out is most people view themselves as doing everything they're supposed to do, and almost always look at the spouse as not holding up their end of the bargain. And therefore, most partners get really angry, disgusted, resentful of the other partner in the partnership relatively early on. And even when there's a good business plan and a great product and great marketing, a huge potential and an opportunity to make a lot of money, they blow it up because each side is basically spending all their time blaming the other and patting themselves on the back. That is unfortunately how many people enter their marriages. Everybody enters marriage, obviously with good intentions, hoping to make the other side happy, etc. But once the marriages begin playing out, and some of the natural difficulties and conflicts which come about when two different types of people, two different human beings try to live together in the same space, what inevitably happens is I start looking at my spouse as, hey, I'm doing this. How come you're not doing that? And the other one says, well, what are you talking about? I'm doing this and you're not doing that. And rather than focusing on what I'm supposed to be giving, I focus on what you're supposed to be giving, and it's never enough. And hence our partnerships tend to fail. And to wit, half of marriages end in failure.
My favorite part of what you're talking about is half of that stuff is expectations. It hasn't even been verbalized. It's just an expectation I have of whoever it is I'm supposed to have married, that they should be doing this, they should be doing that, they should, and that I've never even asked for it. So we'll put the double whammy of that. With the egoic taking and quid pro quo here, versus you really should read my mind.
100%, 100%.
So why is this, why did you guys leave business? Peter, you talk about being an architect and how it was much more important for you than building buildings is to build relationships and build people. And I love that really moved me. Why do you care about this? Why are you guys in the marriage game?
So I'll tell you like this, is that, um, one of the things I'm most drawn to in life is the world of integrity. And one of the things you see, which is so fascinating, is that if you ask people, like, what's the most important thing to you in your life? Why are you working so hard? Everyone will give the same answer, which is, my family, or, to give my kids certain opportunities. But it's fascinating that if you look at people as far as their priorities in life, anyone who decides to get married, they will be the first to tell you that probably their biggest priority in life is their marriage and being able to give that everything that they can. But it's actually fascinating. If you look at our professional careers, when you go and let's say you take a job, well, you didn't just show up at that job day one. You went for an undergraduate degree, you went to graduate school, you had training before the job, you had training on the job, you had, who knows what. And the amount of time, education, money, and effort that you put into your career was unstoppable. And what's fascinating is here it comes, like the biggest priority in our life, which is our marriages. If you ask people, they don't really put a lot of time, effort, energy, or money into getting ready for that. And not only getting ready for it, how about once you're married, if you have an investment, you want to make sure that it's going to be kept to the highest level possible. And therefore, what can I do to make sure that it's running at maximum capacity? So what I was kind of always so bothered by is, here's something which we hold to be the most important thing in our life, but what are we doing actually to make that be a reality? And therefore, I speak for myself and for Tod, we just saw that there is so much that actually can be done to make it that not only that your marriage can be the most important thing in your life, but you can actually be amazing at that marriage. And I've grown up in a world, and I've just seen so many cases where marriages, started with great intentions, and just so many of them fell apart so fast. And therefore, we have really tried to dedicate the past 15 years of our time together towards is really not only helping people be prepared for marriage, but even once they're married, helping them have the tools that they need in order to make their marriage flourish.
I would just add to that. I would just add to that, Mark, that relative to whatever kind of work I've done, and I have a long kind of strange career pathway. I was initially an investigative journalist, and then when I needed to make a real living, I became, I went to Wall Street and worked my way up and became a Wall Street analyst. And at some point, my wife and I looked at ourselves and said, is this the ultimate thing that we want to be delivering to the world? And is this the ultimate thing that we want to be doing family-wise? And is making money really? And by the way, I don't disdain in any way making money. I mean, it's hard to support a family if you don't have money, and it's hard to do good things outside of your marriage and have an impact in society if you don't have some assets to throw at that as well. And we were trying, I think, in many ways to live an idealistic life. But at some point we said, maybe we can spend more of our time trying to do something more meaningful. And at the end of the day, I think there's nothing more meaningful than helping other people attain to meaning and purpose in their lives. And we just had an awesome opportunity to start a postgraduate program in Jerusalem. Peter joined me from the very, very beginning. And by the way, we were not initially starting that program in order to work on people's marriages. What happened was we wound up with a group of students year after year, kind of best and brightest, lots of Ivy League, lots of young professionals, having gone to graduate school, having had a few years of work in whether it's consulting or finance or medicine or acting or cutting across lots of careers. These were a group of young people who came to our institute in order to take about a year or so and study Jewish philosophy, Jewish literature, and Hebrew language and leadership skills and ethics and character building. And so it was kind of a great training ground that people viewed as, here's a great way to launch my life and take it into the next level professionally and in every other way. And the amazing thing we found, that I think Peter touched on this, is, here you got some young man in front of you, 27, 28 years old, Ivy League, has done phenomenally well at some investment bank, has plenty of opportunities to do everything, talented, the works. And then when you really get down to it, the person has phenomenal training for everything career-wise and zero training for actually doing what that person may say is the most important thing, which is building a family. And so when it comes to wow, their parents are divorced, their friends' parents are divorced, they themselves may have been divorced once, and just a feeling of, I'm prepared for everything in my life except for this. So we just started spending more and more time working on it. We had both been involved in building our own marriages. As we talked about before the show, I'm pushing 60, and Peter here's a young fellow. He's just a little over 40. But the point is, between the two of us, we probably had 45 years or something of marriage between the two of us, or by now we do, with our respective spouses. And we simply felt, there is a lot to be done here in the world of preparing these young people for marriage. And it comes out of our experience, B, actual, real, true immersion in mystical Jewish sources, which have incredible, incredible insights in the world of relationships and how love works, and how marriage works. And Peter also has a master's from University of Pennsylvania in positive psychology, and that brought a real cutting edge, kind of research and
Mm.
therapy edge to our work. So we just felt, wow, if we can combine the best of the old and the best of the new, and a lot of experience between us, and have a living laboratory to do that in, what a huge opportunity to live a meaningful lives ourselves. And I think that's a long answer to your question.
Yeah, as we talked about before the show, my family is involved in Chabad. My kids, my ex-wife, spend a lot of time in the things that I've learned in life, in ethics, in how to conduct myself, and in relationship from ancient Jewish wisdom has been so profound. And for my own life, the reason why I think this is so important is, I call myself an executive coach. I've traveled the world and steeped myself in positive psychology, in coaching modalities, in shamanism, in relationship, in all of these things. And when it came to the long-term relationship I'm in now, in my marriage now, um, I'm still at a loss of how to do relationship, and I'm an expert, right? I interview experts. And when it comes to my own subjective relationship, my wants, my needs, my expectations, my all this stuff, navigating that and getting a marriage counselor and learning those things to navigate, and having a referee has been life changing. So I'm totally um, bought in here. So let me ask you, define marriage for me.
Peter, you want to do that?
Yeah, I'll define marriage for you. I'm going to make it short and sweet. Marriage is basically the commitment that you have to your spouse through thick and thin, through good times and bad times, that you're going to do everything in your power to invest in your spouse having the life that he or she wants. And it is basically, all of a sudden you have a relationship where you have two people and their main priority is to invest in the other person, to invest in the other person's success. All of a sudden, at that point, you have a marriage.
That's incredible. In my language, I would say it's my job to create my partner. It is my job, right, to pour into that person so that I can create them to be whoever they can be and whoever they can be to me. So I resonate with that deeply.
And if you take now two people that are committed to that ideal and they're going to do everything in their power to make that happen, so all of a sudden you have something which, is worth living for and is worth fighting for. And when you do that, it creates a certain magic that no wonder people make this their top priority in life.
So you take another piece from Jewish mysticism and wisdom, that marriages have to be built, right? Where they're just not, and you take that Jewish inspiration. First an idea has an inspiration, and then you need to bring it in the world through work. Talk to me about that.
Sure. That is one of the most profound and fundamental ideas in all of Jewish mysticism, which is that everything in reality comes into reality in two phases. There is a phase of, I'm going to call it, again, this is not Kabbalistic language exactly, but I think it translates into our world. There's a phase of pure inspiration, and then there is a phase of building and making something real. So let me give you an example that everybody will understand. Childhood versus adulthood. What is childhood? Childhood is, I can be anything. I have this period of time of pure possibility. That's what we always find so cute and adorable about kids is, today they're a doctor and the next day they're a policeman or a policewoman, and the next day an astronaut or a ballerina, and the next day, and it's that infinite amount of possibility of all the things I can be, which create an incredible sense of what I can accomplish. That's the beauty of being a child. And of course, the tragedy of being a child is that a child can be anything, but really is nothing. And adulthood is the exact opposite. Adulthood
Mm-hmm.
is taking all of that inspiration and saying, I am now going to figure out what I'm going to really be. And the only way I can do that, by the way, is through the painstaking process of cutting away all the things I'm not going to be. And by the way, some tends to be men, but many men remain in the mode of child even as they become grown-ups, so to speak, from the standpoint that it's just too hard to really commit to anything in particular. So you have, the super talented person who just can't really pull off one career because, well, how can I do this? And because I always want to do that. It's the same problem which says, how do I commit myself to one woman? Because after all, they're also amazing and they're also beautiful and they're also interesting. How can I commit myself in one place and cut myself off that way? The word decide, by the way, is related to the same root as homicide. It's to kill. When I decide something, I kill off a part of myself, which was a possibility that I had.
Oh
And that's
man.
what, that is why deciding is so hard. And the more
Oh, so
possible.
so I got to pause on that just because
Yeah,
that's so
sure.
profound. It's very rare I hear something so new that just blows my mind. So when I decide, I'm choosing a direction and I am killing off the possibility of an idea, the possibility of a direction, the possibility of a new part of me. And there's always a morning when there's a decision to be
Oh
made.
yes. Oh yes. Oh
It's like
yes.
the same word as pesticide.
Exactly. That's right. Killing up. That's right. That's right. I have to kill off all the things that are going to bother me and bite me. But that's that going through that painful process of killing off all the possibilities that I'm not going to be in order to grab onto and work tirelessly for the one thing that I am going to be. That is what adulthood is all about. And when we talk about a person acting like an adult, I mean, I think that's what we mean. We mean a person who has taken responsibility, who does the work, who can be counted upon. So that's an easy way to look at it. I think the other place that everybody can relate to this idea is in the world of relationships, because everybody has the romance phase, and then what really determines whether they're going to be successful is what they do with the building phase. Everybody knows what the romance phase looks like, feels like. We all crave it. It's so amazing that it's breathless and I'm intoxicated and I can't think of anything but the other person, and they're perfect and I see no flaws in them. And it's that is usually what the movie is about. The movie is about, they meet across the dance floor and they're intoxicated and he falls into her arms, she falls into his through whatever circumstances. And then somehow there's always something difficult that happens and they're separated from each other. And the end of the movie is this amazing romantic moment where they fall back into each other's arms again and promise that they will be together forever. And the curtain comes down. And of course, the problem is that marriage begins when the curtain comes back up. and it's the morning after, and it's the week after, and it's 3 weeks after, and he's not so cute, and she's not so funny. And there's a decision at that point that has to be made, which is, have I just been tricked again with this thing called romance, and this is just another dud, and I've been fooled by life once again? Or to the contrary, was that what was needed to get me involved with this person? And now I'm going to basically say, I'm going to commit myself to you, and I'm going to give to you, and I'm going to grow with you, and we're going to make room for each other. And that's going to build a relationship that can actually last. Romance, we all know, does not last. One advisor that I have once said to me, if you come back to me 3 years into your marriage and say that you can't breathe when you see her, come see me and I'll take you to a doctor, because that's asthma. That's no longer, that's not romance at that point.
Well,
And I think
it's also interesting because I work with a lot of people who have been married for years, and often they're having affairs, and they're like, and this person just makes me feel young again. This person makes me, and it's that intoxication again, because they haven't done the hard work to get intimate, which is what I've
100.
learned now in the past 2 years. I learned at 57 years old that I don't know that I've ever been intimate before in my life. And I will say that intimacy is not nearly as fun as intoxication. It's more rewarding. It's amazing. It's mind-blowing to me, this intimacy, but it's also uncomfortable. Because if I'm going to be intimate with someone, I'm going to be vulnerable, and it is uncomfortable, right? So why not go for the intoxication? Why do all this work? I know now on this side, right? So
Right, and that's interesting. One of the things we speak about, in really the way of how to make your marriage amazing, is one of the things we speak about is this idea that, like all things get old and things wear off. But what we have found is that there is this idea that you can still make things fresh. And there are clear tactics that we speak about, which are things that people can do in their marriage. I don't care whether you've been married 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that there are things that you can do in order to bring back that original magic. And we go through some very clear tactics of how to make that happen.
you're
And
not
what we
going anywhere
found,
until you give us some of those very real clear tactics here.
and what we've found is that couples that go out of their way to make these things happen, they bring them into their life, it can create such a beautiful energy where all of a sudden you have a couple that's been married 25, 30 years, and they have experiences where they're like two teenagers at a school dance. And what we've seen is that there's some clear things, which I'm happy to go into a couple of examples that we speak about, that can really kind of bring that magic back.
So everybody's on the edge of their seats.
Okay.
Give us a couple.
I'll give you a couple. Okay. So I'll tell you this. One is the world of vacations. So you may think vacations, beautiful, nice, idealistic, but totally impossible idea. I don't have the time. I don't have the money. I don't have a babysitter. Not going to work. So vacations, you're right, are a bit unrealistic. But what we have found is even more than vacations is what we call the mini vacation. What's the mini vacation? The mini vacation goes like this. You have a husband and wife. Let's say they're both working in the city. They have a few kids at home, whatever it may be. Instead of waiting for that day that you and her are going to go to that tropical island and have 2 weeks off and everything's going to be perfect, which probably won't happen, is like this. All of a sudden on a Tuesday night, you book a hotel room in the city. It doesn't have to be the most expensive hotel room. You find a babysitter that can stay with the children. And all of a sudden, on that Tuesday night after work, you obviously do everything you can, leading up to it to get ready, get some, whether it's get a haircut, whether it's whatever it may be. But all of a sudden, you plan this evening on a Tuesday night. You and your spouse meet after work. And now all of a sudden, there you are. Maybe you get dinner first. You go back to this hotel room. You have a beautiful evening together. And all of a sudden, the next morning, you wake up and both of you are back to work. And, what you're going to see is something absolutely amazing, is that you have basically 3 stages of that whole process, which lead to a whole world of well-being. You have number 1, the lead up to that, the excitement, the getting ready for it, maybe buying new clothes for it, maybe getting a haircut for it. Number two, you have the beauty of the experience itself, those 12 hours of ecstasy, those 12 hours of romance. And number three, you have the savoring of it afterwards, where you're looking back on what that magical moment was, and it was quite awesome. And all of a sudden, when people bring the mini vacation into their life, I'm not talking about once a year, I'm talking about what about once every 2 months?
Mm.
And if you put that into your life in a real way, what we have found is that what that can do for a couple, what that can do for your the romantic part of your relation, what that can do as far as creating a certain chemistry and energy you feel your relationship is missing is absolutely unbelievable. So that's one example that we use.
And Mark, we actually unearthed some very interesting research from a couple of different arenas, both in Europe, it happens to be. And what they turned up is that most people, the peak level of happiness in the course of the overall process of the vacation is the planning period.
Right.
And that is to say, that's when the two of you are huddled together in front of your screen, and you're looking at hotels, and you're looking at things to do, and you're trying to find places you're going to eat, and you're and 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 why is that so much better? By the way, because by the way, it's always perfect. It's
Right.
what's not perfect is getting to the airport, having a delay, having them lose your luggage. The hotel is not what you expected. The food was overpriced and it was cold. The waiter was not nice to you. Someone picked your pocket. The actual playing out of a vacation can go either way, but the planning is always perfect, and therefore a couple should always be in the process of planning their next vacation. And that excitement is just as good if we're just trying to figure out how to spend a Sunday together. We figured out some way that
I like
maybe I'm
that.
going to
I
say,
like that. Spending Friday evening deciding how you're going to spend Sunday together.
you got it.
Right.
You got it. And by the way, if you can add a date night on a regular basis, literally a date night every single week, you'd be shocked at the statistics of how few couples really do it. And it is definitely one of those ways to bring well-being and freshness into your marriage. And by the way, if you can keep your own marriage fresh, you don't need to keep looking outside of your marriage. And you're 100% right, by the way, that the research is showing that it's people right before they hit 40, right before they hit 50, and in general, people who are older as opposed to younger who are having affairs because they just have lost that spark.
Hmm. So the third paradigm shift you talk about in the book is all loving is based on giving, right? And I think the whole it takes a lot. It takes actual effort. It actually takes work, right? And it's so much easier to turn on the TV. It's so much easier to just go to bed. It's so much like, so how do you help people find that oomph to do those extra miles, to actually think about giving rather than receiving, and putting the work in to put the oars in the water to make the marriage work?
So maybe I'll jump on sort of the theoretical end of this, and Peter maybe can talk about the implementation. But one of the things that I'm going to take you back to Jewish mysticism for a second. If you look at the creation of the human being, and you actually look at the language carefully in the original, in the Hebrew, what you find is that the first human being, which is called Adam, right, of Adam and Eve fame, Adam actually in Hebrew just means human. And in fact, if you look carefully, the first human was a male female being, both. It was a double human being merged at the back, and able to function as a single unit, never fought about anything, could reproduce amazingly. And then what happens after that? They are put to sleep. God separates them, and now they have to turn towards each other and find each other. Now, a lot of strange questions come out of that. If they were meant to be two, why create them as one, right? And if they were meant to be one, so why tear them apart and make them two? Like, what is it? Like, it's almost like a strange game. And one of the most beautiful answers is that they're created in a sense. And by the way, the fact that they're created that way is meaningful to us because that means that that's a paradigm for every human being with their spouse. That is the concept, that my spouse and I were created as a single unit, a single being. And there is an echo of a longing for a oneness, which I think helps explain why people spend so much time feeling lonely, like there's someone out there for them. They're not finding them, they're not making it happen. And the answer is because there is. And there is a concept that I was one with somebody, and I want to rediscover that oneness. And by myself, I'm not complete. So, okay, so why couldn't we just leave it that way? And the answer is because if we don't become then two and find a way to then find each other, try to bring each other close, give to each other, and then try to rebuild that oneness through giving to each other, then what happens is we're just automatons. The only way to become truly human in this process is to make choices and to build and to invest in the other person. And that is the fundamental idea that at the end of the day, we always feel that one of the problems with the world of marriage books and articles and all the things, there's a lot of great stuff out there, but it tends to start at the level of like strategy without understanding what's the purpose, what's the concept, what are we working for here. And that's why we felt it was important to delve into some of these deeper ideas. Oh, I long for marriage because I really was one with somebody, and I'm now not one with somebody looking for that someone because it's my job to really try to build something outside myself with somebody else that'll make me a bigger person. Oh, and guess what? That's going to take work. Had we just been born as one unit, there's no work involved, and there's no process, and therefore there's no real creation of love. And Peter, has some implementation issues on that.
So I'll tell you this, I think that, it's interesting, the world of positive psychology speaks about it so much that, it speaks about different levels of pleasure. So the lowest level of pleasure is when somebody just comes to you without work. You drugs, you get a high, obviously, but there's a big low afterwards. Or someone gives you something you didn't actually work for. It's nice in the moment, but the higher level of pleasure is when people actually work hard for something, then they really feel a sense of, wow, this was really amazing. So I think that that idea of working at something, that idea of investing in something, is something people understand in every other area of life. So really what I just try and do is just try and get people to apply that same paradigm to their marriages. And what I find is that when they actually try this, even if they don't believe in it, all of a sudden, when they come back to me after a period of time, they say how amazing they feel and how their marriage has changed so much by just, the results of just experiencing. When you invest and you work hard at something, I think it's something that anyone can taste. So what I try and do is give people a small taste of it. And once they see that the paradigm also works here, then I find that they have the desire to keep trying it for the long term.
But I also like any spiritual endeavor, any worthwhile habit, practice with the marriage. You'll decide to do the work, and you'll come closer, and you'll be, this is amazing. I had no idea we could recreate our marriage like this. And then complacency, life, and everything will get in the way again. And you need to come back again, and you need to come back again, because it's going to ebb and flow. And I think people forget that this isn't a one-time thing. You're going to feel in love 1 minute, you're not going to feel in love another time, and you're going to go weeks where you don't feel like you're connecting. Then you're going to feel like weeks where you're inseparable. And to be able to go over the long haul and figure out, for me, like, again, a meditation practice, and how do you get back on the horse? How do you get back on the horse? Because you're going to fall off the horse, right? So what you're saying with that work is making that a lifelong practice of coming together is beautiful.
That's right. And one of the things we also, there's another piece of ancient wisdom, which is that love is literally created through giving. People have such a distorted view of what love is. So you ask somebody, how come your marriage is so, why'd you guys get divorced, after, 15 years of marriage, or 10 years of marriage, or 5 years of marriage? And you'll frequently hear, well, they stopped giving to me. They stopped, doing the kind of things for me they used to do. She got so, kind of like selfish, or he got this way, or he got that way. And therefore I don't love that person anymore because they just don't do the things for me that they used to. When in reality, I mean, let's look at areas which are not too emotionally, wrought for us. Who loves who more, a parent or does the parent love the child more, or does the child love the parent more? So, I mean, I think most of us would agree that the parent loves the child more. Well, why is that? I mean, the child gets everything from the parent. You would think that the child would be madly in love with the parent, given that they get freebies, throughout the entire childhood. But the answer is, it's exactly the opposite. You love where you give.
Mm.
Giving creates love. And the deeper idea of that is I invest myself in something. And I ultimately, by the way, ultimately you love yourself. And the more you put yourself into things, into projects, I mean, why do I love the house that I built more than the house that I bought? Why does a kid love the Lego set that he built, even if it's a crummy set, much more than a more expensive set that someone assembled and gave to him? And the answer is because they invested in it. So they love where they invest. That's why people love their dogs. They love their plants.
I ask that of my dog all the time. I'm like, you're such a taker. Why
You're
do I
such a
find you
taker.
irresistible? I love you so much, and you're just take. And
You
I
do
do
nothing but take. It's not a partnership. It's not a partnership. So that's 100% it. And so when people get the sense that if I would just start giving, I would love my spouse so much more. That again, and of course you're right. Of course it ebbs and flows because we get distracted and we get tired and life throws us so many curveballs. But if I stay on the subject, by the way, my wife and I, and anybody can say they and their spouse always have the ability to say, let's prioritize our marriage together. Let's constantly work on ways to make marriage better. So whether it's going to be that we're going to, do the mini vacations, or we're going to do date night, or we're going to read a book together and go over a chapter every week to figure out how to do things better, I'm willing to give to you. And by the way, the real secret, and this was really the fourth part of our paradigm shifts that we put in the book, is that you can do it yourself. You don't have to wait for your spouse to do this. When it comes to giving, I can give to my spouse irrespective of whether they're giving to me, but almost always that's going to create a virtuous cycle where they will want to give back to me. And ultimately I become the biggest recipient of that giving.
That's beautiful. And, for me, who I believe us to be is love. We are love. And I like to take out, I love you. Because again, that's me giving to you. I'm going to love you. I'm going to give to you. What I want to experience is love. And by giving, I experience the love that's really true and part of my essence, part of the essence of the world. So it's not me giving you love. It's me experiencing love flow through me that I tend to enjoy. Great. I
Amazing.
leave my guests speechless. That's all.
I am speechless because I totally agree with it. And I would just add one other thing. The concept of my investing in you and creating love for you really makes me become a bigger person. I expand my boundaries the more I put love and work and investment and care into the other person. And the beauty of marriage is it offers such an incredible opportunity. Well, on the one hand, to screw things up on a regular basis, but on the other hand, an incredible opportunity to have a platform for giving constantly. Totally. I mean, you think of the number of times during the course of any given day in matters both large and small, where you have an opportunity to give to your spouse. And every time you do that, you're making yourself a bigger person. Everybody tells you I want to live a life of meaning and I want to be the biggest person I could be and the greatest version of myself. Well, the greatest version of yourself is probably not going to happen by just how much time you spend in the gym. It's probably going to be a function of how many people's lives did you touch, make better, and invest yourself in. And no place do you have more of an opportunity than in your own relationship.
It's interesting. In the field of positive psychology, they have these things called positive interventions, meaning what are practical things you can do in your life in order to increase well-being. And basically, if you look at the research, the quickest kind of turnaround, if you're not in a good place, the positive intervention that has the quickest turnaround to get you to a place of well-being is very clearly get outside of yourself and start giving to someone else. And then for that process of you switching and getting outside of yourself and giving to someone else, that will increase your well-being the fastest.
Said that's an AA. If you feel like drinking, go do something for somebody else. The Rebbe, Rabbi Schneerson, says that God created man to be in relationship with himself, right? So who better to be in relationship than the one who's sharing your bathroom sink, and right, like in close quarters. So it's just awesome. So we're going over, but I'm going to ask one more question because I want to get salacious. So what does Jewish mysticism, Jewish wisdom talk about with sex? Give us a little bit, like in the long term, like building your marriage. How do we come together in that direction?
Oh, I'll jump in here. I'm sure Peter's going to want to add, but it is really the cornerstone of that relationship. And it is, again, the concept is a person has every human being has three basic levels of soul. One level, and they all add up into the person. The lowest level of soul is your physical drives, and then you have emotional drives that are higher than that, and then you have spiritual, intellectual drives that are higher than that. Those are what animate a human being. If I come together with you intellectually, okay, so I'm a professor and you're a professor, you enjoy art and I enjoy art, and great, we can have a mind meld on some sort of intellectual experience. If we're both emotionally involved with each other, that's also a very nice thing. That can be very nice. I can express love for you. I have friends who I dearly, dearly love and care about, and I care about what happens to them. And then there's a physical relationship. And I can have a physical relationship where that's all there is. And the problem is that again, the newness always wears off in that. And if you don't build the higher levels of emotional connection and intellectual connection, then it ultimately falls apart. So the Jewish vision of this is that you have to come together as one on all three components. And if you're missing any component, you don't really have a marriage. So two people who really care about each other and are intellectually agree with each other, but they actually have no physical attraction to each other, are not meant to get married. And the beauty of physical attraction when you have the higher elements to it is that the physical attraction lasts and can last and last for much, much longer than people could ever imagine. And so it's cornerstone, key, absolutely, no question about it.
Beautiful.
So I'll just add two things here. Number one is that I think that there's no such thing as a great marriage without a great intimate life. And, that requires some explanation because, unfortunately, there's a problem, which leads me to my second point, is that, just like things get old, one of the places where people feel that things get old very fast is in their intimate life. And people are looking for that new experience or that new person or whatever it may be. And just like great marriages are built, a great intimate life is built. And if you're just waiting for, if you're just hoping that that freshness that you had in your marriage is going to continue in your intimate life, obviously all things change, all things get older. So you're going to have to build your intimate life on something more than just that romantic passion that you just had. You're going to have to build your intimate life on something more and something which is deeper, something which is truly special, in order to make it that as your intimate life continues, that it gets stronger with time. If you look at a lot of people, if you look at a lot of the research, most marriages that within their, if we're saying the intimate part of your marriage is so important, if you look at a lot of the research, most marriages, the intimate part of their life falls apart quite fast. So, whoa. In what it should be is that you've been married for a year, your intimate life is amazing. You've been married for 3 years, it's even better. You've been married for now 5 years, it's really strong. 10 years, it's like, whoa, the connection that we have in our intimate life is absolutely awesome. But that takes work. That takes making your intimate life about something more than just physical pleasure. And if you do that properly, all of a sudden it can be that as your marriage grows and as your marriage gets older, your intimate life actually becomes that much more amazing.
You just sold a bunch of books. People were like, all right, how do I get that? Well, let me get it on Amazon. I got to get that book.
Can I tell them where they can find it? They can find it at www.notapartnership.com/mastering midlife, and you'll get some great access to some of the stuff we've been doing.
Oh, thank you. You guys are going to make a Mastering Midlife page on your website. That's so cool.
You got it. You got it.
So we will put that link in. We will put that link in the show notes. So let's go into that. By the way, thank you. This was brilliant. This was wonderful, and this is just the tip of the iceberg of what's available on your website, in your book, in your. It's just an incredible wealth of experiential information that you can put into your life immediately. So where can people find you?
www.notapartnership.com. And they can even hit /mastering midlife, and they can get special access to some of the programming that we've done by way of this podcast.
Cool. The book is called Not a Partnership, Why We Keep Getting Marriage Wrong and How to Get It Right. It's great. It's not that big. It's not that big. I think it's like 270 pages, which is so doable. Like, let's get to the point. So that's really, really great.
We also wrote it in a way which it's an easy read, meaning you can pick it up and put it down, and so
incredible. And you guys are both you guys are both based in Jerusalem. Can people
Correct.
find you on LinkedIn and social media anywhere?
They can, via the website, they can find us on social media, and particularly we have a Facebook group that Peter is constantly involved with on an interactive basis, and we have short videos, etc. So via the website, they can find everything with us.
Okay, all those links again are going to be in the show notes, so it's going to be easy to find you, gentlemen. Thank you so much for reaching out across the ocean, all the way from Israel, to be with me. I appreciate you sharing your wisdom.
Thank you so
Thanks
much, Mark.
so much, Mark. Okay, best of luck with everything.
Thank you. To my wonderful listeners, your time and your attention are precious to me. I love you. Have a great rest of the day.